And Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Radio. It is April 2nd, 2023. Figure4online.com/WrestlingObserver.com. And in fact, night 2 of WrestleMania is over. And normally, after night 2 of WrestleMania, we would start by telling you about night 2 of WrestleMania. But in fact, today, we are going to tell you about it, but we're not going to tell you about it right now because, in fact, as I was walking through Beverly Hills today.
Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, I went for a walk. I was literally in 90210. 90210, Dave.
Oh, did you see anybody? Did you see anybody that Garrett knows?
I don't know, actually. But here's the point. I was walking, and I got a text from Filthy Tom Lawler, and I can't even remember what it said, but I was like, what are you talking about? And he told me the news that was out. And all of a sudden, my peaceful walk through Beverly Hills turned into, oh, my God, here we go. Every time I leave, something monumental happens, and this was no different.
You know why I didn't go?
Because you didn't know this was going to happen. Come on.
No, I didn't know this was going to happen today. But I knew it was I knew it was coming in the month of April.
You knew that Endeavour was going to buy WWE in the month of April?
Oh, I sure did not know that Endeavour was going to buy. Because, no, I will say this, okay? Ari Emanuel, multiple times, including at the investors conference, said, in fact, they had no interest in this. They had no interest in adding debt. And I believed him. So, no, I mean, I did not think, even though, like, there had been people telling me, no, Endeavor's really still in the game. And it's like, you're not going to lie to your stockholders in an investment call. Little did I know that I should not be taking people at their word, which is I rarely do because it's wrestling.
I mean,
but,
come on,
God.
Dave. How long you been doing this? You taking anybody at their word? I mean, come on.
At an investors call,
Ridiculous.
You're supposed to. At an investors call,
you're supposed to. You're supposed to. But,
I mean,
they can say, it came together at the last second, and we thought, we'll merge these things together, and all this debt, blah, blah, blah. What's the story here, Dave? What's the story of Endeavour and WWE?
Well, we're going to get the whole story probably, as soon as tomorrow, when they make the announcement, which is, I mean, everyone has it. So, I mean, it's, as far as the details, I mean, UFC and WWE are going to be the same company. They're going to be a company only of UFC and WWE. Endeavour is splitting the company, and they are going to use, they're going to go public with this new company. So the money they're going to use or get by going public with this new company will be the money that they use to buy WWE and probably take on loads more debt, see how much they can get from the public. And they are trying, the attempt will be to have this new company valued at $21 billion. WWE and UFC combination company, with the idea that they will control this sphere, which they will, whatever it's called, the real and fake fighting sphere, not including boxing, and, or whatever you want to call it, simulated fighting and unsimulated fighting that doesn't include boxing, but basically the near monopoly companies, the giant market share leaders in both of those industries. And by doing so, they will create leverage. I mean, there is a lot of the idea of UFC and, when Endeavour first came in to this, when the sale was first talked about, until Ari said, I'm not interested, we're not interested, and very logical reason why, I did think that they made sense. Not as much as Comcast. I thought Comcast made the most sense. Saudi made a lot of sense. Actually, a lot of sense. And Endeavour would have made sense. And actually, other companies could have made sense too. But with this, when you can make both of these companies so much more profitable because, you have the UFC has a staff. WWE as a staff. You can take that staff and basically merge them and have those people who are doing these jobs do the jobs for both companies. So you can do a lot of front office cutting, so that saves money. When it comes to negotiating rights deals, which is the main business that both of these companies are in right now, they will have a lot of leverage by having both companies, and also they will know what's going on in the marketplace because they'll be negotiating both companies' deals. So if somebody, managed to come on to this great deal, they might be able to hook both of them up and come in with power and just go like Peacock, just as an example. We can get you, if you pay us this much money, you'll get two big companies with different fan bases, and whatever the streaming rights are, or ESPN Plus. Look at all this money that you're making on UFC pay-per-views, and this is where Nick Khan brought up the pay-per-view thing this week. Look at all the money you're making on UFC pay-per-views. Look at the profit margin you're making on this. Why don't you double that? Or it wouldn't be double because UFC is going to be bigger on pay-per-view than WWE. But why don't you increase it 1.6 times, like 60% more, because you can buy and do the exact same business that you do with UFC pay-per-views and do it with WWE pay-per-views. They do 12 a year. UFC does 12 a year. You could do the exact same thing, and you can get more subscribers to ESPN Plus. Plus, you can charge for these pay-per-views, and you're not even splitting the money, and you can make money like they're making, very good money on the UFC deal, and you can do that. It opens up, different types of ideas for television rights, separate, come together. You can put them both on the same network, and have a very powerful type of thing where you could do, TVs on Mondays, Fridays, Saturdays. You can avoid running pay-per-views on the same night like they're doing on May the 6th. And, just there's all kinds of things that it's beneficial to have both. So the way the structure looks to be working is Ari Emanuel will be the man in charge. Vince McMahon and Mark Shapiro will be number two. Co-executive chairmans, I believe, would be it, or whatever the exact term is. And then underneath them will be Dana White and Nick Khan, who will be the president of UFC, as Dana White still is, and Nick Khan will be the president of WWE, as opposed to the CEO of WWE as he is now. One of the interesting things also that just came, just the other day, Vince and Nick Khan signed new contracts, and this is, a nice prelude because Vince's contract, gives him a lot of protection in case he gets fired. Because when that contract was signed, it was almost to me like, okay, they got to be selling, because why would Vince worry about getting fired? For getting fired, because if this didn't get him, nothing's going to get him. The only thing that's getting him out of this position is death, and so he's got a thing where if he is fired, he's got the whole balloon payment or the whole parachute stuff and everything like that. And then Nick got this big raise, where he's going to be making, basically the equivalent of, he was making about $5 million a year, and now he's going to make about $9 million. So they signed themselves to new deals. It's not $9 million. It's $9 million including performance bonus, regular salary, and stock grants. And with Vince, it's a little under that. And there'll probably be some other ramifications. And if they get a 9 point, depending on exactly how this purchase goes, because if they're going to purchase 51%, which I've seen said, they'll have controlling interest in WWE, but they were not going to be spending $9.3 billion. They'll be spending $4.7 billion. But they'll have, so Vince would get in that situation he would get probably about $1.75 billion from the sale. I believe that would be about the number. If they buy the whole thing, he'll probably get about $3.5 billion from the sale, and but still retain his position and power. And as the chairman, Vince is going to be in the position. He's above Nick Khan, he's above Levesque, he's above everyone, other than Ari. Ari's the final decision maker, but Ari is there to actually do what Nick was doing, as far as he's going to be the guy out there selling TV rights. Well, Nick is going to be running the pro wrestling business. So, he's going to be the deal maker. And I'm sure Nick will be involved and Vince will be involved. Maybe not Vince even involved once he sells the company. He may not be involved in that. But as the most powerful guy on the WWE side, Vince will, in fact, make the many of the key decisions. Ari can overrule him, but Vince will be actually, like if Vince wants to run creative, Vince can run creative. And we both know Vince has had more involvement in the last couple of weeks anyway. And, so as far as that goes, and we've seen with Dana, just a couple of weeks ago, well, not a couple months ago now, because of New Year's Eve, when it comes to Dana, and Vince will be the same way, it's going to take, it's going to take pretty much a murder investigation to get either of the guys out of office, because, Dana's thing, it's right there on video. It was bad. And he was not even given a slap on the wrist. He was no suspension, no nothing. And I don't expect to see Vince I know that Dana's wife slapped him first and everything, but still, it was an ugly looking scene. And Dana was not even reprimanded. So when you're talking about the tolerance level for Dana and Vince, it's going to be pretty high. And obviously all of Vince's stuff was taken care of from a financial standpoint. All the accusers have been paid, so that's done. There's nobody else that's going to come out of the woodwork, because that's what that investigation was all about. So, that's the basic gist. There's a lot of questions. Obviously the one question that I've heard been asked several times is, what about Saudi Arabia? Because Ari Emanuel did not want to do business with Saudi Arabia. And in fact, Saudi Arabia had put a lot of money into Ari's business, Endeavour, and they, paid off Saudi Arabia to get out of the business, and they have nothing to do with them. So they wanted to do nothing with Saudi Arabia. Now, that was also a couple of years ago, and that could change. My gut is, and again, this will all come out. My gut is that they will fulfill the contract, and it's got many years to go. And when that contract is over, it just depends on the situation. Will he want to do business with them? I'm guessing probably, but you just don't know. You don't know where, but that's totally going to be an area decision as far as Saudi Arabia goes. But yeah, and they'll also be, one of the other things that they will be doing is more of this international stuff, because UFC, almost all the UFC shows that are held outside of the United States, with the exception of the London shows, are pretty much bought and paid for, just like Clash of the Castle was, just like this the Puerto Rico Backlash show is, just like they're negotiating with Perth, Australia for a big show this year, Saudi Arabia, and other countries, and again, like UFC's tried to, had a deal and it fell through, but to do like Seoul, Korea, and there's different places where UFC will be going because they are being paid. And it's the same thing as far as they're going to work for both companies. This is one of the things they'll be doing is they'll be going to sell WrestleManias, but also sell UFC pay-per-views to cities, get, the breaks on the rent and money to be brought in with the idea that we bring in tourists to your city, and therefore you should pay us for that. And, like WrestleMania, they brought ridiculous amount of money to Los Angeles. And, obviously WrestleMania's been very, very successful. And they're trying to make SummerSlam and Royal Rumble the same way, and have. And UFC is probably going to try to be doing that more and more and more, because it's, it makes sense economically to do that. So, they are very similar companies. And really, they're remarkably similar. When Lorenzo Fertitta bought UFC, the first thing he did was study pro wrestling, read my stuff and get all the SEC filings of WWE, study exactly how they do their business. And the WWE business was the template for what that UFC business wanted to be and eventually became. So, that's just a lot.
Well, I got a question here for you.
Yes.
Okay, so WWE is a publicly traded company,
Yes.
and the rumor is that Endeavor will buy 51% of the company. Okay.
If it is 51%, right? Yeah.
Okay, but that's the rumor. So then they would buy 51%.
If they're gonna buy, they will buy either 51% or far more than 51%. But
Yes, but my question is, if they're buying 51%, I'm trying to figure out how this works. They're going to buy 51% of the company.
Yes.
Then they're going to create a new publicly traded company, which consists of WWE and UFC.
Right.
So, and that will go public as well.
Yes.
Okay. So how does that work for the shareholders that currently have WWE stock?
That'll all have to be explained. If they're buying 100%, obviously everyone's.
If it's 100%, that's easy.
They're all going to get paid on the 9%.
51%.
If it's 51%, then they would probably get paid half of what it's worth, but also maintain the other 49% of their stock. So let's just say you have $10 million in WWE stock, just throwing out a number. You would get 5.1 million, but you would retain stock that is worth 4.9 million, and it's actually way more.
But stock in what? The currently publicly traded company or the new company?
The new company.
Okay.
There would not be an old company. I believe.
Okay.
I have not had. Believe me, I have not had this aspect of it explained. I'm actually just going by, just common sense or so. But again, we have to find out what percentage it is and then how that's all broken up. But the idea is.
Okay. Then the other question, and this isn't even a question; it's a statement. I mean, we've now that UFC would be part of this new publicly traded company. I mean, we'll get all of this information about UFC that we did not get before.
Not necessarily, because we were getting the information of UFC since 2014, and it still was very vague. I mean, WWE was very good at detailed information, especially years ago. They were exceptional at it. I mean, as far as I could look at everything they did. Now they've become, in time, they become less detailed. Because if you look at what was some of the MMA companies were what was the one, the Team One, IFL, I believe, and then there was the Elite XC. Those were public companies, and we got information every quarter, but it ain't one like WWE. I mean, I would look at the stuff, and it's like, yeah, I can see this, and we would see how much money they lost. We will see, and again, they may break it down as just UFC and then just WWE and combine, you know what I mean? Or they may just go, okay, this combined company grossed $2.6 billion this year, and we made 500 million in profits, and not really say a whole lot else more. That remains to be seen. Like WWE gave more information. We will get information, but it will be, again, if you look at Endeavour, they would break down. We didn't even get UFC specific information from the releases. We would get, Bushiroad, just as an example. Bushiroad's a public company, and every quarter we get Bushiroad Sports. So it's Stardom and New Japan. And so the numbers we get are the combined numbers of the two, but it's not broken down. So we don't know, this company's making money, this company's losing money. We just know the combined company is doing this. And with, with Endeavour, it would be Endeavour Sports Properties or whatever they were called. And we would get a number. And it was essentially the UFC numbers, but it did include PBR because they also own PBR. So it would be okay, we 1.3 billion. It's probably, just as a number, let's say they grossed 1.3 billion. Well, probably 1.25 billion is UFC. And then a little bit more, whatever, the rest is PBR. So we may get more vague numbers, or we may get, separate numbers, and I don't know what the answer is. When they have the stock calls, it'll be airy. It will, will it be the CFO? They'll have a CFO, probably who will be the CFO of both companies. I think the things, again, from learning from what happened when these guys took over UFC, what the keys will be to look out for is, number one, loyalty. Whatever loyalty Vince had with people, that will be gone. because there's new owners and they're going to make the decisions, and Vince will not be able to override the decisions. If you remember when UFC was sold, Chuck Liddell was out, Matt Hughes was out. They were supposed to have jobs for life. They didn't get rid of Forrest Griffin because Forrest Griffin was actually working really hard and running stuff and all that. But in the office, there were people who helped build that company from the beginning, and some of them stayed that were necessary, and the ones that they felt were not necessary, on the TV negotiating side and things like that, they were gone. And I think the same thing will happen here. UFC fighters, it was, UFC is far, far, far more profitable than it was under the Fertittas because of the new TV deals. And the fighters they're making more, but as a percentage, they're probably making less of their gross revenue. And I would think that will probably be the same with WWE in the sense of, if I don't think the wrestlers are not going to be making less money on new contracts. Like, let's just say you're a guy who's making, let's say, $2.5 million a year. Let's say $1 million a year. That's more of an average guy. Okay, you're making $1 million a year. When your contract's due, they'll do the cuts when they need to make the cuts and things like that. And I don't, what the decision as far as, like, will they keep this many people? Will they run as, developmental with as many people? Who knows? My gut is that there's no point in cutting developmental because those are low cost deals. They may cut and say, just, hey, do we really need 200 people in developmental? How many of these guys are really going to make the main roster? And the developmental is not a moneymaker, so to speak. So, maybe recruit more. Will they say, we want to recruit more athletes? Will somebody in there, will Ari decide, you know what? We brought in all these Division I athletes, and we've had them in camps and all this, and here we are. And how many of them are making us money today of those recruits? Not very many. Will they do that tomorrow? Probably not. But I'm saying like 2-3 years down the line, if not a lot of these guys are making you money, they may go, you know what? Who's on top at WrestleMania? Okay, it's like Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. Maybe we should get these guys, Cody Rhodes, who granted was from their developmental system, but, was not necessarily a great Division I athlete or anything like that. He could have been a Division I wrestler, but he wasn't. Roman Reigns was legitimately, Division I athlete, but he came from the family. It's like, okay, that's a totally different thing as people coming from the wrestling families. They'll always recruit them because they grew up around the business and they have the respect and blah, blah, blah. So, those type of things, those type of things could change greatly. I would think that I would think that the salaries of the wrestlers will not go down. But as we've seen with UFC, when guys become free agents, there are guys that and then they're usually guys a little bit past their peak, like Phil Davis and Ryan Bader and Anthony Pettis and guys like that, who were stars, and Yoel Romero, these type of people who were stars, but they're getting old, who Scott Coker or PFL tried to make bids, Chris Cyborg tried to make bids for, offered more money. It could be, if we look at, what happened with UFC, it could be them just going like, you know what, we're a machine. We don't need anybody. If somebody wants to offer more money, let them go. If it's Tony Khan, nobody else can offer the kind of money you make in WWE. But it's one of those things where, like when Coker was being run by Paramount, he did have a budget where he could, he couldn't sign everyone from UFC, but he could sign some people. And, UFC didn't bid high. Like did he get Conor McGregor? No. Did he get John Jones? No. Will they get Ngannou? Time, will be seen, But I could see, with people who are, like the bidding war aspect that we do have now, I could see Endeavour going like, you know what? We're a TV rights company, and there's nobody that we need. Roman Reigns could go away tomorrow. We're fine. Brock Lesnar can go away tomorrow. We're fine. We're okay. John Cena left. We're growing. And just go, you know what? This is our salary structure. We don't need to overbid for anybody. I could see that. That's just from the UFC, what they did with UFC. And a lot of what they did with UFC would be what they would do here. So, I mean, the key thing is going to be, rights internationally, both sides, working together for that. And, obviously the big money is, U.S. television, streaming, whatever it is, media rights. And you could do combined sponsorships and things like that. I could see a lot of that, and departments working on sponsorships for both. So, I mean, there's absolutely great benefits for Endeavour. The risk, obviously, is if TV rights don't continue to escalate, and they're counting on, WWE doubling their money in 2024 when the new deals come up. And if that doesn't happen, and they have this giant debt to service, and they have this stock that would go plummet without it, that's the risk. The risk is they're banking on the idea that rights will will continue to go up. And, at some point they won't, because unlike in the past when rights were going up, the fact is these networks were all making money. Now everyone's losing money on streaming television. No one knows what the future of television is. There's right now still a thing of, a lot of things, NFL's a different thing, but there's a lot of things that are going around where there's uncertainty. The RSN's folding has hurt baseball, or will hurt baseball dramatically. And it's not like people are jumping in to fill those voids, or at least doesn't look like it now. Maybe they will. So baseball has some issues, and if they do, that will go to a lot of other people. So again, like if these streaming companies and television companies are losing money, there's a point where they cannot afford, no matter what the ratings are or anything like that, that they cannot afford that type of programming. And these guys are banking on that. So that's a pitfall down the road. But, years ago when they bought UFC and people were going, $4 billion is too much, and Ari made a bad move, and there's not, are they really going to get that kind of rights fees in the next deal that they think they're going to get? Because he was looking for a giant increase. Well, guess what? He got a giant increase. UFC is not necessarily as popular as it was, and WWE is not as popular as it was at other points in time too. But the value of live programming has gone sky high for television, and how long will that go? Maybe forever. It's, every time people say it's gone as high as it can go, it always goes higher. The bubble hasn't burst, but at some point, it's a risky economy right now. So it's a big risk, especially right now to do a purchase like this. So, but they're doing it. Ari's a risk taker. He took a risk with UFC, paid off big. This is a lot more, it's a lot more expensive a risk. $9 billion versus $4 billion. It's a big difference for a similar company.
All right, well, tomorrow after I guess tomorrow before the Raw Report, we'll talk about the sale, if it does go through tomorrow, because that is the rumor, but that's what we know about it right now, and perhaps by the time most of you listen to this, it will be official.
Everything I said may be obsolete, but probably not.
That's right.
As far as all the stuff, as far as what happened with Endeavour or with UFC, where you would expect it to repeat. That's that's what you would expect. I saw the whole thing go down with UFC, and the thing is I guess the key part is that the talent itself, for the most part, lost a lot of value and leverage. Unless you're Conor McGregor, and there's no Conor McGregors in UFC. In WWE. So it's not like I said, I do not expect, if you're making $1 million a year, that when your deal comes up, they're going to go, hey, we're going to cut you to $500,000. I do not expect that at all. But I don't expect that you're going to get $2 million $2 million a year on your next deal either, unless you've graduated to that level from being this level to this level, and then maybe you will.
How's it going, everybody? Brent Alvarez and Dave Meltzer here. Wrestling Observer Radio, April 3rd, 2023. Figure4online.com/WrestlingObserver.com. We got a lot to talk about here today, and we actually talked about a lot of it yesterday because
we talked about some of it, but
the WWE sale was announced today, and we did talk about some of it yesterday, but what more do we know today, Dave?
Well, what more do we need to talk about? I mean, the basics just is that it was not, there was no cash transactions in the sale. So it isn't like, Endeavour or Area Manual, had to go into debt on this. What the deal was is that they merged the two companies together. UFC is spinning off from Endeavour. So that was the goal, the basic thing to get WWE aboard was to basically do the two companies, which, you can work them together, cut costs, use the knowledge from the different companies to help the other company. And essentially what happened was Area Manual pitched to Vince the idea that he bought this company in 2016 for $4 billion and that today it's worth $12 billion. So he's tripled the value in 7 years. And Vince's thing was, we can't triple our value in 7 years. They can. So he put them essentially in charge. So the 5149 is that the stock will be 51% of the stock will be Endeavour stock. The WWE stock holders will own 49% of the company. So essentially, if you have, a certain number of points in WWE, and using Vince McMahon as the example, Vince has 38% of WWE. He will now have 19% of the new company, and he'll actually be the biggest shareholder in the new company. And he's executive chairman, and he's back in charge. And he was running TV tonight. So any of that talk that he's back. It's what it was. It will be what it was before. And that's, if people think that was bad, it will be bad. If that's and that's just the way it is. And the TV show was changed when Vince got there, and it was changing as the show was going on. And that was tonight. And that will be what it is going forward. And Area Manual's not going to be involved in the wrestling. Vince is running the company. Nick Khan will be number 2, and Paul Levesque will be head of creative. So he's going to be doing the busy work and all that stuff, but he's not going to be. Vince is going to have final say on everything. When it comes to that, and even with Area Manual being number 1, Harry said, in the interview that was released on CNBC today, that if there's disagreement and Vince doesn't want something on the wrestling side, it's not going to get done. So, and they said they really wanted Vince, and there you go. That's the big picture stuff. You got any other questions?
Well, we'll go through all of these. We talked about a lot of this and what it potentially could mean on the show yesterday. If you did not hear the Sunday edition of the show, make sure to listen to that because we spent about a half hour on this. But Anthony here says, in the case of Kenny Omega or others whose AEW contracts are up before the merger is approved and finalized, could they be scared off from signing with WWE due to uncertainty over what the product will be like once it is a part of Endeavour? Well, what it is now is what it's going to be. It's already. You could watch this Raw show tonight, and man, this was the old days. Promising a main event, which they didn't deliver. An hour, a full hour, a commercial-free hour, by the way, with 2 minutes of wrestling in it to open up the show, and it was the old Raw again. So
it's going to do a phenomenal rating, but which has nothing to do with the show. But I am pretty sure that number 1 coming after WrestleMania is going to do a big number with all the news of the sale and the curiosity. That's going to help the number, and announcing Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes all in this main event match. If anything's going to keep the viewers till the end, that's it. Because, Brock never wrestles on TV, and he still didn't wrestle on TV. Roman rarely wrestles on TV, and also didn't. And, they shot a big angle with Cody and Brock. But, as far as, look, everything's a factor. Everything's a factor. Like we say, will this make a difference? It is something else to think about. As far as, with Kenny Omega and people like that, when it comes time for that decision, unless he's making the decision to stay, he's going to make the decision to leave. That final decision coming for months anyway. So, of course it's going to have an effect. If he looks and thinks he won't be as happy, then, again, he's in a good position to do, he'll make money either side, so it doesn't matter just what his personal goals are. And I know his personal goal is to have the most fun possible. And, that's, what that means is whatever he considers the most fun, and help the young talent too.
Samir says Vince and Triple H made it a point to always try and kill anyone they see as possible competition, not literally, obviously. Is that something we can expect to continue, or do we think they will stop caring as much under the new management?
It's Vince. Vince has an MO. It's going to be the same. Whatever, if not worse. But you know what? I think, okay, I think that because of what happened with NXT and being run off for Wednesdays and losing every week and all that, I think that it was more personal to Levesque to get back at Tony Khan, because I think things actually, like, I remember kind of like Tony Khan's comments on this, and I kind of saw this the same way, is that when Vince was out of power, you kind of think, well, okay, the big bad Vince is gone, and now we're going to have regional people there, and maybe, they'll work together, whatever. It won't be so cutthroat. And it was more cutthroat without Vince. So it ain't going to be any worse for, in that sense. But yeah, Vince is the master of the, of that kind of business. Paul Levesque, has a personal issue with them, and ain't going to get better. I mean, for Tony Khan, this is not, some people think this is good news. And, if it comes to a point where people are miserable there because of Vince, yeah, that would benefit Tony Khan. Okay, that could. But from a power standpoint, after this weekend and those shows, and the one thing AEW had was they had the much better wrestling and they had the much better matches. And now, WWE always had the better production. They have the huge inherent advantage of being there forever and being the A brand and everything like that. And that's a hard nut to crack. It's almost impossible. But going forward, now that WWE, and who knows how this will all play out. WWE had great matches the last two nights. So that advantage that AEW has, you could argue they still have it in a little bit, but it isn't as big as it was 6 months ago, as far as the advantage in the matches. And so it's their claim to fame, or the one thing that they could argue that they were better at, and maybe they still are, but maybe they're not. I mean, put it this way, I expect better matches on Wednesday than we got tonight. I think that's a pretty safe bet. And I think that would be going forward a pretty safe bet. So there is still something for AEW to have their niche in the market, but it's going to be harder. And this company, it's only going to get bigger. And the money's guaranteed, and they got between Nick Khan and Ari Emanuel, they got some pretty damn good negotiators for all of these new deals that will be coming up in the next, couple of years.
Burr says, do you think Cody will win the title with Vince in charge? And if so, when?
There's no way of knowing. He should win it.
But I think everyone should also keep in mind that the whole Cody thing started when Vince was in charge. It's not like Vince was gone and Hunter hired the guy and started from there. Vince was in charge and had him beat Seth 3 straight times, and they were building that story with Vince in charge. So
No. Cody was always going to be, it was always going to be Cody or The Rock against Roman, and that was up to The Rock either way. Whether that didn't change with Triple H. That was Vince's thing. The other thing is Vince is the one who personally recruited Cody, not Triple H. Not that Triple H didn't use him well; he used him great. But the point is that Vince was the one who flew to Cody with Bruce Pritchard, and Cody at the time was not looking to go. He wasn't going to turn down. He got Bruce Pritchard called, and it was like, are you interested? And it's like, well, I should listen it out. I'm a free agent. And then Vince flew down to see him. And once Vince flies down to see you, Vince is a pretty good, he's got that aura, and he's very convincing. And, Cody still, had to go back and forth and everything. But it was Vince who largely was the one who got this deal done. So Cody is not, Cody's not some guy that Vince hates. He was the guy Vince brought in. So whatever happens, I mean, whatever's going to happen if Cody's going to win the title or when he's going to win the title, I mean, that, who knows? It probably should have been yesterday, but, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's like, what are you going to do?
This person here says, you find the timing of the story dropping interesting. Between Mania and the Raw after Mania, we announced not only the sale, but Vince returning, particularly after the last year of Vince in WWE, the allegations, his leaving, etc. It feels slightly designed.
Oh, I'm sure that it was, I'm sure that the timing of the announcement and all this, of course, I don't think that there's any coincidence to any of this. I'm sure when they made the deal and it's, largely finalized. I mean, they were still, put it this way, Mark Shapiro was still working on the deal at midnight, the other night. So it's not like it wasn't actually done. But I mean, in principle, did they know a couple days ago? I think so. Did they pretty much come to terms a couple days ago? Probably. And then the announcement, the decision of when to make the announcement, was going to be, we want to do it, Sunday of WrestleMania. Or if they wanted to do it Saturday, they'd have done it Saturday. It was, that was just the way, or get the story out, how the story leaked out on Sunday. And I think Sunday being a good day because the market was closed on Sunday. So you don't have a whole bunch of activity going on Sunday. And then you announce it first thing Monday morning before the market opens. So you have the story out there. But with the idea of creating a lot of excitement in the market, although the stock for both Endeavour and for WWE actually went down today. But, I don't, as far as long term, and I can actually see why it did, but long term, isn't today.
This person here says, how will WWE and UFC promote their programs on each show?
You mean promoting each other? Remains to be seen, but the opportunity is obviously there. I would not expect, on the weekly Saturday UFC show, plugs for WWE, nor the other way around. And I could be wrong. But I would think that when there's a real big UFC fight, would they send the fighters to Raw? Yes. Would they send a promotional package there? Yes. When WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble is coming, would they promote that on UFC television? I would think yes. But I wouldn't, if you do it every week, I could be dead wrong. I haven't talked to them. I didn't ask anyone that. And even if I did, I'm sure that they wouldn't give me an answer. And I'm not even sure that they even know themselves. That's probably not even something that's going to come up. But I know that that's like, at this point, that's one of the things that they were talking about. But, if it was me, like I said, if there's a big Conor McGregor fight, you put Conor McGregor on Raw, the week before, 2 weeks before. Absolutely.
This person wants to know, why hasn't Peacock followed the UFC model for WWE pay-per-views when it clearly brings in more profit?
That was just the deal that they made. I don't know that WWE really wanted to go back to pay-per-view. But I don't know, does Peacock even have a pay-per-view arm?
I don't know if they do.
I don't think they do. ESPN Plus does. I don't think Peacock has pay-per-view, so that's probably the answer right there. That it probably, because I don't think it was ever even considered. I never heard of anything when they went to Peacock of talk of making it a pay-per-view like what UFC still does.
This person here says, one thing I haven't heard anything about at all is WWE's old and new office building. It says there will probably be massive layoffs and staff consolidation coming soon. What happens to the properties?
They're still going to go into the new. There'll be layoffs and stuff most likely, but they're moving to the new place. UFC's going to stay in Vegas. There might be some layoffs there, who knows? But they're going to stay in Vegas. WWE will be headquartered in Stamford, Connecticut. That's not changing. They're being run as two separate companies, but they are they are sister companies, and there will be people who will be working on both. Kind of like what UFC and Power Slap, where, there were people in UFC that were working on Power Slap. Like when WWE had, some of their attempts, whether it was running, boxing or running, what other things, World Bodybuilding Federation, Vince's side things. It was people in the company who were involved in XFL. A lot of people in WWE worked on XFL. Not the second one, but the first one.
This person here says, what impact will WWE now being under the auspices of a renowned holding company like Endeavour have on some of the practices that typically would have gone under the radar in the past? The most glaring being the misclassification of WWE talent as independent contractors, blatant false advertising, etc. Is WWE likely to incur fresh pressure to clean up their act and greater accountability for their behavior, or will they still be able to get away with scummy business practices?
Okay, as far as UFC fighters are also considered independent contractors and probably shouldn't be, so that's not going to change, or at least from their standpoint. I mean, if everyone gets together and tries to collective bargain, of course it could change. That hasn't happened, and I don't expect it to happen. But from they are not, Endeavor is not going to change that most likely. As far as false advertising, that's an interesting one. I think that if they, my gut is that they are staying out of that aspect of wrestling, and their mentality is that Vince knows wrestling, and if he's done this for 30 years and this company's so successful, then this works. As far as honesty or not, it's not like, UFC all of a sudden became like this super honest company. I've heard plenty of whoppers from the UFC side too, so I don't expect that aspect to change. If there was a big clamor or something like that, could they say I quit false advertising? Look, we had it tonight. You know what I mean? And I don't think that that's going to change.
This person here says, the deal feels like it is perfect for Vince, but maybe not what other shareholders would be after. What was the best offer they received that was all cash?
That's a really good question. We don't know the answer. But obviously there would have been, how high that other deals were, we don't know. We know that there were other people involved. I think Saudi would have gone high, but the deal with Saudi is that puts a black mark on the company. They can, there are people who wouldn't do business with them, or it would be difficult for them to do business with them knowing they're owned by the Saudi government. With Ari running it, there's none of that. So for the company, for the image of the company, this is a better move. Now, as far as could they have gotten more cash from somebody else? Yeah, I think so. I think if anybody wanted to buy it for, let's say $6 billion, they'd have gotten $6 billion in cash. This was a non-cash transaction. What's going to happen is all the shareholders are going to get some money when the sale goes through. It's not a large amount of money, but it will be some money. And the rest of it is going to be, you can sell your stock. You can sell it now. You can sell it, when your stock goes over to the new company, TKO, in a couple months. You can sell it then, and it may be worth more. It probably, with the value of and profit margin of UFC being thrown in, because UFC was so profitable last year. It increases the value of your stock by having a more profitable company as part of this package. So in theory, it is a stronger stock now because of the UFC involvement.
This person here says, I want to know how much this will affect live events and pay-per-views. Will all events on the schedule still take place? I live in Atlanta, planning on going to the already announced July 17th Raw. And will Peacock still stream the pay-per-views, or will people have to pay their cable provider to watch the events?
Okay. The Peacock deal has many more years to go, as long as that deal is in effect. That none of these deals, including Saudi Arabia, Fox, all these deals that are on board for the years, none of these deals are changing. When the contracts run up, they will be negotiated, and things can change. As far as the touring, I don't expect that to change. As far as shows announced, I would not expect, anything to change unless they get a bug up their ass and want to run head-to-head with the UFC show and they have another date, or not a UFC show, an AEW show, and they have another date. As we've seen, they might do that, or they'll, that certainly could happen. But as far as, if there's a pay-per-view in a certain city that it's announced, it's most likely none of this is going to affect that. There's things that will affect it, but the sale isn't going to be one of those things.
And of course, Triple H came out to be in the show tonight and alerted us that nothing is going to change. Everything is going to go on exactly as it's gone on.
And yeah,
Then, now, forever.
No, that's Vince's
Yeah.
tagline, right?
Yeah. All right. Any more? Will there be a major wave of releases?
To be determined. I couldn't say for sure. You've got a. It really depends. We talked about this last night. It really depends on the mentality of creative, and that's more going to be Vince. It's going to more be Vince again. Rather than I don't see Ari Emanuel going like, "Hey Vince, we've got too many guys in developmental." He's going to go, "Vince, tell me about this developmental," and it's going to be whatever Vince feels it is. If Vince feels that this is the way to go, and we sign 200 guys hoping that we get like 10 stars out of it, and that's that's the idea, then that's what they'll do. If Vince goes in there and goes, we got just too many guys here, and it's not a good idea, and he could do that. Yeah, then a bunch of people in development will be let go. But that's not going to be that would always be when Vince was back in control, which was going to happen. That's probably going to be a Vince McMahon decision. Certainly not anyone else. Although now though the difference is before Nick Khan was always the scapegoat. It's like Vince loved me, but goddamn, Nick Khan's like forcing him to fire everybody. And it's like, so now, I mean, people may still say that, but, they were stupid then and they're stupid now if they still say that.
This person says, with the WWE and UFC under one umbrella, will we see more UFC fighters being involved in programs with WWE wrestlers?
I would say if everything was perfect and it was the right mix, it's possible to do it easier, but I don't think it will be anything regular. I think it would be a very bad idea to do this regularly. If you have the right guy with the right charisma, and he's a big star, and you could put him on a WrestleMania show in a match and all that, yes, it's much easier to pull that one off. Like, Dana may not want that for his talent, but now I think Dana would just go, hey, it's our company. If you want, if you think that John Jones, will help you in some form, then he can stand in the way, or Connor, or whoever. They make some new star, like they don't really have the person right now, It's like, but years ago, I mean, they went with Paige Van Zandt, WWE wanted her. And, and she wanted to do it. It's just the timing never worked out. And then she ended up doing it with AEW. And I guess that she didn't like it as much as she thought or something because she didn't doing it anymore. But it like, again, I don't expect that to be a regular thing. Like when Spike had Bellator and they had Impact, there was a lot of cross promotion. If you remember, they had King Mo with that dual contract thing. Rampage was on, Tito was on, and I think it was too much. I think that the Impact people had no clue how to book. Like you book it like you're booking, like New Japan would do it, right? You book the shooters like they're Minoru Suzuki. You don't book them to be fake pro wrestlers, which is what TNA did. It's like, this is what wrestlers do, and it's like, no, you bring in frickin' Rampage. He shouldn't be doing what wrestlers do. And I hope that enough people in WWE would know that to, if it's the right person, you got to handle it the right way. But again, I don't expect, I don't expect that it would be a regular thing. I think a regular thing would be, especially now, if it was like 10, 15 years ago, when business was different, and the mentality of the fans was different, I think that you could do it more because it would have more of a thread of realism. We don't have that really right now. So now it's just a question of if you got the right entertainer who can come in, the door will be much more open.